Soul Talk is brought to you by Godlywood Studio, Brahma Kumaris.
Make Love Not Scars works in all aspects of rehabilitation for acid attack survivors across India. So far, we've rehabilitated over 60 acid attack survivors. Spirituality is something that the survivors definitely heavily rely on. And I think it's something that we all as human beings rely on. And it's important to be able to believe in something and keep that faith alive. Will bring back some sort of positivity into our lives. Hi, my name is Riya Sharma and I am the founder of an organization called Make Love Not Scars. Make Love Not Scars works in all aspects of rehabilitation for acid attack survivors across India. So far, we've rehabilitated over 60 acid attack survivors. My story starts when I was in my third year of college. I was studying fashion at the Leeds College of Art, which is in the UK. And at that point, I didn't have a passion for anything in life. I was not passionate about what I was studying. I only picked fashion because at that point I thought it would be an easy subject, and I was very eager to leave the country like a lot of people my age at that point. And I think the first out that I got, I kind of took it. So it's not a surprise that when I studying the subject, I wasn't performing, I wasn't doing well. And, soon I realized it was because I wasn't passionate about the subject. And, I think we all go through our lives where we keep trying to make certain things work. But I've realized that if you're not passionate about those things, they aren't actually going to end up working. So in my third year, my professors told me that if I didn't, give them something or some substance or come up with a project that had some depth to it, that they were not going to pass me and I was not going to get my diploma. So at that point, I started researching into the women's rights movement in India, which was inspired by the Nirbhaya gang rape. And, I was quite inspired by it myself. But at that point, I didn't want to do anything about it. I didn't, join any of the protests. So I didn't put up a story about it or any of that. So, while researching about the women's rights movement in India, I stumbled across a picture of an acid attack survivor. And at that point, when I saw the picture, I thought, okay, maybe, it's an accidental burn. Maybe, a cylinder, caught fire, and maybe that's how she, ended up like that. And I didn't know that there was something, as devastating as acid. I mean, at the end of the day, what is acid? Acid is a substance, and, just throwing a cup of liquid on someone can forever change their lives, steal their identity, ruin their standing in society, take away their hopes and dreams from them. And at that point, I could not understand how such a simple act could cause all that lasting damage. So I started looking into it deeper, and I said, what is this? What are acid attacks? And I, went on to various websites, and I was trying to figure out who are these women. Their faces kept popping up on different websites, but at the same time, their stories were different on every website. And that kind of set me on a journey, and I decided to come back to India to shoot a documentary on acid attack survivors. So this one day, I remember when I was shooting the documentary, I got this phone call and they said, there's this one survivor and she, is in Bangalore. Can you go help her? So at that point, I was 21. I was extremely, extremely spontaneous. I jumped onto the next flight. I went to Bangalore. And I remember, I was supposed to meet another survivor there who was going to take me to the hospital to introduce me. So I was supposed to meet this one survivor who is basically a coordinator, and she was going to take me to the hospital to meet the new case. When I met this survivor, I met her outside her house, and I remember she's talking on her phone, she's messaging, and then we walked to her house and stuff. And when we walked into her house, she took off her glasses and she was completely blind. She had no eyes. And in that moment, I was just like, how is she doing all of this? How is she texting? How is she walking to her house without a stick or anything? And I was astonished. And then later on, I went and found out that, activist herself. She has a government job. She supports her entire family. She's taught herself how to do all these things. And for me, that trip was so sort of iconic because it started on this high, and then we drove to the hospital, and my ignorant and sheltered upbringing had ensured that I didn't even know that a ward consisted of more than one bed. So before we were walking into the ward, a psychologist came to me and she said, if at any point you feel uncomfortable, you want to walk out, don't worry, just tell us and we'll take you out. And I kept thinking to myself, I was like, wait, why will I feel uncomfortable? They're just patients after all, why would that make me uncomfortable? And, as soon as I walked in, I kind of understood what she was talking about, because that ward had all of 30 beds, but there were 60 patients there. They were lying on the floors. There was blood everywhere. There were syringes just lying about. And, all these women, the one thing they had in common was that none of them were going to be there next week because they were suffering from such severe burns. I remember the first bed, when we walk into the ward, there's this lady, she's sitting up in the bed, and she is not wearing any clothes, but it does not matter because she has no features. You could not tell her different from anyone or anything. And she saw me, and she just puts out her hand and she starts waving and smiling. And in that moment, I remember thinking, I was like, oh, she has long hair. And the only way that I could tell she used to have long hair, because there was just one really big strand of hair that was coming down till then. She had no other hair at all on her head. And I remember thinking to myself, why is she smiling? And then I realized that, she had gone into such shock that her body couldn't even register the pain anymore. She was not sane anymore. So the next day when I got back to Delhi from Bangalore, I took the name of my documentary, Make Love Not Scars, and I registered it as a fully functional organization. And from that point onwards, I've tried to do anything and everything that I can. I remember there was a time that I would get these calls, I would get death threats, and I'm a 21-year-old and I'm 5 foot nothing. And I remember I couldn't walk from in my house at night. I couldn't walk from my room to my kitchen to get something to eat because I was so scared that someone's going to attack me with acid. And this fear was there for so long, till one day I realized, I said, okay, fine, what, even if someone, let's say, attacks you with acid, okay, it'll be for a good cause. And I know that sounds like a very morbid thing to say now, but it was the only thing at that point that kept me going. And I kept telling myself that, look, whatever happens at the end of the day, it'll be because you're doing it for women that you love, and by this point they're like family to me. And so, and I think when you love someone, you don't just sort of give up on them, and that's what the survivors mean to me. So that's been my inspiration behind Make Love Not Scars, and that's how it all started. Now the organization has successfully rehabilitated over 60 acid attack survivors. The organization also runs the world's first rehabilitation center for acid attack survivors, which provides medical rehabilitation, legal aid, skill and vocational training in order to make the survivors contributing members of society again. We also contribute to a large amount of awareness that is spread on acid attacks. So we try to change that, and today is one such effort. So if anyone's listening to this video, my only sort of message would be that, we need to be more accepting of people, and we need to not put so much weightage on the way that someone looks. And just because they look different from you does not mean that they're not a human being. And, we should all be more accepting as a society in general. I think in the lives of the survivors, spirituality is something that plays an extremely large role. And it's because I think whenever we as human beings are going through something, and times are extremely tough, we all need something to believe in, something that will bring back some sort of positivity into our lives. So I think, spirituality is something that the survivors definitely heavily rely on. And I think it's something that we all as human beings rely on. And it's important to be able to believe in something and keep that faith alive and be positive.